Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of the most important sources and give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
Today, we're immersing ourselves in a moment in technology that a leading CEO is calling an extraordinary inflection point.
And we're not just talking about growth here. This is being compared to the arrival of, the personal computer, the internet itself.
Exactly. And it's not just corporate talk. When you dig into the sources, you see this is a kind of technological leap that really only happens maybe once a decade.
So our mission today is to go beyond the cool demos and the headlines and really look at the physics of this boom. We're talking about the scale, the money, and the big trade-offs.
Right. The jobs, the trust, the incredible energy demand. We have to reckon with all of it.
Let's start with the scale. This CEO calls it the era of AI. What does that actually look like in terms of investment? Because the numbers are almost hard to believe.
They really are. And you have to look at the financial intensity to get it. So just take this one company. 4 years ago, their annual spending was less than $30 billion.
Okay, which is already a huge number.
A huge number. But this year, their projected spending on AI infrastructure, we're talking chips, servers, all of it, is set to fly past $90 billion.
90 billion. So a single company tripled its infrastructure spending in just 4 years.
And that's just one player. When you zoom out and look at the whole industry, the collective investment is well over $1 trillion. $1 trillion.
And what's the goal with all that capital?
It's the speed. The goal is to build, in just a couple of years, the kind of foundational infrastructure that historically took the industry 10, maybe even 20 years to construct.
When you see that kind of money moving that fast, you have to ask the question, is this a bubble? It has that dot-com era feel to it.
It's the natural question. And the CEO gives a very analytical answer. They sort of split it. On one hand, they say the excitement is totally rational.
Rational
Because the demand is real. It's concrete. You have consumers using the tools every day, corporations adopting them. The industry is actually, right now, struggling to serve all the existing demand.
Okay, so the demand is rational, but the investment cycle.
That's where they concede the other side. Investment cycles almost always overshoot. There was huge excess investment during the internet boom, but that didn't change the fact that the internet, fundamentally changed society.
And they think AI is the same. It'll be profound, regardless of any short-term market corrections.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, they included a warning. They said no company is immune from corrections if they overinvest.
So even the giants are walking a tightrope.
Precisely. And that's what explains their strategy, this thing they call the full stack or soup to nuts approach, is their AI-first model.
Let's break that down. What's the strategic advantage of controlling that entire stack?
It's all about speed and efficiency. The stack goes from the very, very bottom, like designing their own custom silicon, managing power in the data centers.
Right, the physical layer.
All the way up to the research models. And then deploying that AI into their products. Search, video platforms, operating systems, you name it.
So if their lab finds a new way to train a model,
they can immediately optimize the actual physical chips in their data centers to run it better, faster. It removes all the friction and gives them this huge integrated advantage.
And that deep investment is what's fueling this next step, what they're calling agentic experiences. This is where it gets really interesting for the user.
It really is. We're moving beyond just Q&A. Today, you ask a question, AI predicts an answer.
A very intelligent exchange, but it's still an exchange.
Right. Agentic experiences are about autonomous action. The AI doesn't just answer you. It takes your goal and executes a series of complex tasks to achieve it.
Can you give us a real-world example of that? Something beyond, say, just finding a birthday gift.
Okay, think about planning a complex trip. Instead of you searching for flights, then hotels, then activities, you give the agent a goal. Like plan a week-long affordable trip to Tokyo for my family, make sure the hotels are near parks, and no super early flights. The agent then handles the budgeting, the booking, the scheduling. It's a whole other level of task management.
That level of automation, though, that sounds like massive disruption for jobs. The CEO was very direct about this.
Very direct, calling it the most profound technology humanity has worked on. And yes, they talked about win-win scenarios, like a radiologist using AI to handle an impossible number of scans.
But they also acknowledged the other side.
Absolutely. The impact on white-collar jobs is undeniable. They specifically mentioned lawyers, accountants, creative industries, journalism.
So for anyone listening, for the next generation navigating this, what's the advice?
The advice is really clear. You have to embrace it. Don't fear it. The core professions, teacher, doctor, lawyer, they'll still be there. But the people who succeed will be the ones who learn how to use AI as a massive lever for productivity.
They gave that example of a high school student being able to make a feature-length film in a few years.
Yeah, which is about democratizing professional-level creativity. The key skill is learning to adapt and use the tool in your context.
But that adaptation, it all hinges on trust, on accuracy. And that's a huge technical problem, right? These models are based on prediction, not fact.
That's the central conflict. Because they are predictive, they are, by their very nature, prone to making errors. We call them hallucinations.
And the company is trying to fix that by grounding the models with, like, search data.
They are. They're trying to constrain the outputs with massive amounts of factual data. But even the best grounding is imperfect, and some of the examples of failure are, well, they're deeply worrying.
We saw some in the source material. Silly things like glue as a pizza ingredient.
Right, but also incredibly serious things, like wrongly accusing a sitting senator of assault. That's not just a funny mistake. That's a huge legal and personal risk.
So the takeaway for the user has to be,
You cannot blindly trust what these tools say.
Yeah.
You have to understand what they are. Probabilistic systems. Journalism, teachers, experts, that whole ecosystem is more important than ever because you have to apply critical thought to every single answer.
That brings us to another massive trade-off. Energy. The scale of this build-out requires a staggering amount of power.
This is one of the most profound side effects, and it's a global problem. The projections are, frankly, sobering. By the end of the decade, AI data centers could be using more energy than entire countries, like the whole of India.
Wow, that sounds like it's in direct conflict with climate goals.
Well, the CEO frames it differently. They see it not as a conflict, but as a forcing function for radical innovation in energy.
How so?
The incredible need for clean energy is driving unprecedented private investment into next-gen power. We're talking nuclear fusion, small modular reactors, geothermal, massive solar and battery projects.
So the demand from AI is actually accelerating the commercial rollout of energy tech that we desperately need anyway.
That's the argument. The company sees it as a chance to move the needle on climate tech faster than governments might. They've made commitments, like aiming for their UK operations to be 95% carbon-free by 2026.
But they also had a warning for governments.
Yes, that
Right.
governments have to step up and scale the grid, or the energy needs will start to constrain the entire economy.
Okay, let's move to the third resource AI consumes. Content. Books, journalism, music. All used as training data. This is a huge intellectual property fight.
A massive one. On one side, innovation needs to be able to use existing knowledge. On the other, creators have a right to be compensated for their work.
What's the proposed solution? Because just letting people opt out doesn't really work if their data has already been used.
No, doesn't. They acknowledge that. They're trying to apply principles similar to how video platforms were built to deliver value back to rights holders, things like content ID and revenue sharing.
So they're aiming for a framework that respects creator rights but still allows for this transformative use.
That's the goal. But it's a negotiation that has to evolve just as fast as the technology, which is a huge challenge.
And all of this brings up the final big question. Power and regulation. When a few huge companies control this kind of tech, the risk of centralization is real.
It is, and the CEO addressed that fear, the old sci-fi fear of an AGI dictatorship.
Right.
They argue the ecosystem today is actually quite diverse. You have multiple major players competing, and maybe most importantly, you have high-quality open-source models. That spreads the power out.
What about balancing being bold and responsible? How do they manage the risks of misuse while still moving fast?
They say they're deeply engaged with government in the US, the UK, everywhere on strategy and security. And they're putting their money where their mouth is, like open sourcing technology that can detect AI-generated images to help fight misinformation.
Before we wrap up, we should touch on the other breakthroughs the CEO mentioned to show this is a much broader scientific moment than just chatbots.
Oh, absolutely. The source material here is just astonishing. Take AlphaFold. AI solved the protein folding problem. It did for 300 million proteins in a few months, what would take a PhD student an entire career to do for one.
Which won a Nobel Prize and is completely changing drug discovery.
And then there's quantum computing. They describe it as being where AI was 5 years ago. So on the cusp of a very, very exciting phase.
And the last example is one we're already seeing on the streets.
Autonomous vehicles. It's the Turing test we kind of already passed without noticing. 5 years ago, the idea of a fully driverless car navigating a city like San Francisco seemed like science fiction. Now it's a daily reality.
Which brings it all back to the central conflict. The tension between rational investment and market bubbles, between huge societal benefits and real job disruption, and between moving fast and needing reliable information.
The stakes are just incredibly high. The tech is going to keep advancing, which means that adaptation and critical thinking, they're not optional anymore. If you're waiting for this wave to pass you by, you're already behind.
And that leads to a final provocative thought for you to think about. The CEO talked about how AI's huge energy demand is forcing massive investment in fusion and next-gen nuclear.
Right, a fascinating dynamic.
So here's the question. Given the sheer scale of this build-out, should we see the development of foundational things like energy and resource management as the true crisis or opportunity that AI is forcing the world to finally address? Perhaps even more so than the algorithms themselves.
That's a powerful way to reframe it. And you, our listener, are probably thinking right now about how all this is going to reshape your own industry.
We really want to hear those thoughts. Please share your opinions in the comments below on how AI will affect your specific field. We read them all, and they really help us shape these deep dives.
And if you found this discussion useful, please show your support by hitting that like button.
Definitely subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next exploration.
And please, share this with others. Knowledge is always best when it's shared. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.